Okay, welcome everyone to the CB3, the SLA committee. It's not a regular monthly committee meeting. This is our monthly meeting to discuss our SLA guidance and policies. This is our, we had one last month where we went over the initial. We took an initial break at last week. Sorry. Doing. We took an initial pass at this, kind of went over the main things that we thought we wanted to address last month. The handout that you have, I might share it on the screen. Will be a few of the things that we pulled together from our discussion last month. These were a couple of the policies and items from specifically from our website. Our main goal on here of this process is to go ahead and streamline what's on our website to make it easier for applicants and community members as well to find the information about all of our SLA procedures, as well as some of our guidelines that we are suggesting to hence as far as how we are reviewing and how the whole board is also reviewing licenses. So, and also I guess because the technically committee meeting, we're going to take agenda. Sorry, we're going to take attendance. Megan Joy. Here. Michael Barrio. Here. Smeltzer. Here. Stephen Ballinger is absent. Guillermo Biglia is absent, and Sandy Gray is absent. So, do you want to go ahead and share
this one or the new document? Okay.
Okay, so a little bit bigger, please. These are some of the things we pulled from the website last month. And we discussed changing it from transfer application because that's not an accurate way to describe what's happening. It's not an actual transfer of license. You can't transfer a license just like you can transfer your driver's license to someone else, or you can't transfer, a deed to a house. You can't transfer a business license or a liquor license. Sorry. So we're going to change this to license application sale of asset of an existing license business. We eliminated some of the text in here, so we're basically going to say if the new liquor license involving sale of assets of an existing, we're essentially, and I think actually that probably it should be not. We should take out the word new in the beginning, so it should be the liquor license application involving sale of assets of existing business. Essentially, a new license with sale of assets such as furniture, lease, etc., sold to the new owner. We would generally not want to increase, and we can tweak this language again. This is what our first pass last month. We would generally not want to increase the impact from the previous business, such as later hours or live music or other things. We think we've mentioned we want to keep the impact the same. A sale of assets allows the new owner to receive a temporary license. So that is something that happens with the asset. They can get their temporary license with the same method of operation stipulations that the previous business had. That's something the SLA would do. So, but when it comes to us and when they actually hear it, it is essentially kind of considered a new license. Do we think that language is clear enough?
I think it's good. Maybe you want to add impact on the community.
Okay.
The previous business.
Yeah, I think that.
And then
For folks online, for folks online, what's the comment on this? So we need to create to Zoom. We'll make a change and then we'll ask. If someone has a comment, let's take the whole thing first.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good idea if we do go through what we've kind of.
We want to make track changes on this.
Yeah.
I mean, we get another copy, so it's not like we want a copy of the original.
Okay, I'm getting comments that it's difficult to hear. Microphone.
And but I mean. The volume should affect the microphone. I mean, I could make it a little bit louder, but hopefully.
So members of the public are gonna be given an opportunity,
Yeah.
given an opportunity to speak. After each change or.
I think I'm gonna kind of go through the
Section by
whole
section?
thing and then we'll. This will up for discussion after we go through what we've made changes from.
At the end, okay. At the end of the revised. Yeah.
Okay, so applicants, so the next section is the 500-foot rule. We kind of pared this down a little bit from the language we previously had. We had some extra words that I think just made it a little bit less clear. So applicants for a full liquor license are subject to the 500-foot rule or to attend a 500-foot hearing to approve community public input. This legally allows consideration of the following, and this comes directly from the SLA. This is not a community board, 500-foot rule is an SLA law. So it legally allows them to consider the following: the number, class, and character of existing licensed premises within 500 feet, whether an applicant has obtained all necessary government licenses and permits for the proposed business, the effect of additional licensed premises for the traffic and parking, the impact of an additional licensed premise level, the history of violations reported to the subject location, and any other factors specified by law or regulation with regard to whether the public meetings and events, as well as the public. Again, that's straight from the SLA law, so we're essentially quoting that. The next part was a previous resolution that was community guidance to liquor license applicants.
Can I ask you? This starts with where it's like a resolution,
Well, we're the previous resolution.
but there's no at the end, I checked, there's nothing at the end, there's no therefore.
I mean, this was what we copied.
I know, but what I'm saying is, it just ends in the middle of the thing, it sort of doesn't make sense to start with the whereas and then not have the whole format, I would just take out that one.
I have the same issue on the next one.
No, I mean, those were the two previous resolutions, which I think what we said we're gonna make amendments to.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is format,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the substance of it. I'm talking as if you started like it's gonna be a resolution, but then there's no continuity of resolution format, so I would take out that one.
But I mean, my only comment is that's the actual previous resolution. You can't change a previous resolution. The amendment would be changes to that.
Well, so
But-
that's what we're talking about,
Previous, so are we
that
gonna
would be.
amend it? I understand. So. Michael, maybe what we sent is for you to put up the previous document. And go to the resolution, so we at least members of the public can see. The original whereas,
This is the whole thing, right?
I don't know if it's the whole thing.
I thought it was, no, that's what we intended.
This one, right?
Yes, I think it's that one. So this was the original, whereas it was from October of 2022. The things that we were changing, that we feel we need to amend. Is. Specifically, this is to make this line up with the SLA law, the first bullet point, and I thought we had it highlighted. And maybe it's just not printed out, because they're printed in color, but like,
No,
we're-
you would be able to see,
yeah.
the first one we sent to you,
The first bullet point for application subject to the 500-foot full on premises license, liquor license application for previously unlicensed location. In the language of the previous resolution, it says the locations that have never been licensed, saturated areas will generally not be supported.
I know it happened.
That conflicts with the state law, so we need to revise that to say previously unlicensed location. Would generally not be supported.
I know it happened, I apologize, when I was fixing the formatting, I accepted the changes for the
Okay, and that's
formatting, and
why.
accidentally got rid of
Okay.
that thing.
So that is the one change that we're making as an amendment, such as portions of the East Village, and previously it said, especially Avenue and St. Mark's. We're adding Avenue A, C, and St. Mark's Place, the Upper Lower East Side, Allen Street to Essex Street, Malcolm Street to Delaney. Second, or the last portion of that thing. The next,
And, second, it's, prior to submitting the application, it says C8.
where's that, the first one?
Underneath the first whereas, this is prior to submitting.
Oh, yeah, that's a C8 for that. Okay, so. Okay, the second section is for applications of problem areas that are likely to be approved by the state liquor authority. That's, I don't think we made any changes to that, we're leaving that essentially the same. We do need to address a couple things. Is in. Under the third bullet point, TV3 always adheres to the recommendations when making recommendations. For presenting a business plan, application, comma stated applying for methods of operation not complying with residential zoning. This would include expansion of existing space at a non-conforming location. I think we adjusted previous guidance. This third bullet point right there is on. We just needed to address based on the city of yes and the new zoning laws. And I think we did confirm that they are still not allowed to expand the footprint.
That's correct, there's grandfathering is now automatically.
Grandfathering is illegal. So we just want to make sure that this last language, so this would include expansion of existing space in one location residential area. So that is still technically correct.
Yes.
And the non-compliant method of operation, but that is still technically correct, even under the city of yes, so.
Because non-compliant method of operation was never grandfathered.
Yeah.
That wasn't grandfathered, it was located in a
The
residential
location in
area.
a residential
You
area,
have 2 year, you know, if you were empty 2
that
years,
no longer.
that no longer exists.
And then the
No,
second,
that no longer exists at all.
No, city of Venus got rid of that, so even if it's empty, 5 years.
it can still be,
As long as at one point it was commercial in a residential area, it can stay commercial.
it does go back. And then this last sentence, so under the current open dining regulations, I think we do need to adjust that to be under the dining out New York, right, is the correct thing, so we just need to correct that name under the current. Actually, we don't need to say current, I think we should just say under the dining out New York regulation. That includes any municipal space, not municipal property. R1 and C1 zoning prohibits scheduled performances, outdoor use on private property, and ticketed events. That is still applicable even under the city of yes zone. And then the last sentence is please check with the zoning for proposal. And then we do say that open restaurants have been replaced by the NYC for whatever style of cafes. I don't think we necessarily need to say that date. We think just to say under the dining out New York, so we can remove that last sentence as well. And then that was the end of that resolution. We now move on to the January 2023 resolution, which was in regards to the outdoor dining. I think we need to change that to Community Board 3 commercial district SLA outdoor dining parameters. I guess we just make that Community Board 3 open dining out New York parameters to make that comply with the current name.
Yeah. Need to think. The program.
So, this part, right?
No, I have type. Yeah, the commercial district SLA outdoor dining.
It's just knock it out by the open streets.
We're not talking about open streets at all, this is just the outdoor dining. Because we don't have any rules at all about open streets.
So I think the first whereas clause is still applicable. The having some choose community district with many residential streets. Commercial overlays serve residential needs as well as commercial streets and avenues. Community District 3 is one of the top 2 densest community districts that we need to establish in the city. We probably want to check, I think, can we check that number, Susan? It's the second whereas clause
Yeah.
with 1,004 open restaurants. I think that's-
Well, the 1,004, I realized that as of January, that number is as of January 2023.
So it should be,
So instead of as of XX, it'll be 1,004 open restaurants as of January.
given that we're amending this, should we put the current number in
I
as
don't
of?
know that, can you find? Yep.
Okay.
Or eating, drinking with. Well, probably.
I mean, it would make sense to just update it as well as.
Yeah,
rather than
right.
have the resolution.
That's big, it's gonna be a big change because that's everybody who had. Who is doing the old program versus everybody's doing the new program, and there's a lot of people that didn't qualify for the new program.
Didn't qualify,
Or at least for bed seating and,
really?
well, yeah, but it's like.
The intersection, that could be so far from the
and
intersection.
They added so many no standing signs during the pandemic. Like, Lucky Jack's had a roadway seating, we don't qualify, we don't, Donnybrook had roadway seating, we don't qualify anymore. Yeah. If now you have to be 20 feet off the crosswalk, not just 8, so a lot of people. The smaller storefronts like.
That takes a
that,
little while.
it's the whole premise that they didn't qualify.
Just say community board 3. And I don't know if we really need to say commercial district. because
Yeah, I don't know what that's
So I
about,
think it should just be community board 3,
SLA.
SLA, open or dining out and YC parameters. Yeah, I guess that's probably the clearest. And then the third whereas clause where we go to. Community District 3 of the New York City Community District has the second number of non-conforming district status with residential size increase. The time of the citywide text amendment in September 1, there were 191 non-conforming, of which 134 are non-conforming with the district. That would still stay, I think that would stay. Community District 3 historically has been one of the top 2 districts in the city with noise complaints at bars and restaurants. And fourth, because of the residential nature and much of I think we need to make that at least between community district and community board, are you right?
No. The district is the geographical area, the board is you guys. So
Oh, I
you
see.
guys are the ones that
Yeah.
approve or not approve.
Community District 3 has historically only approved outdoor dining by cafes that close at 10 p.m. and stipulated that these restaurants comply with the regulations that should allow speakers or TVs in order to mitigate impact.
And events and names,
Therefore,
Well, because we didn't put it there for them, so,
is there therefore?
yeah, you flip over back to the
therefore, resolved.
in locations that are strictly commercial and not residential, such as some of the Bowery and South Street, people consider outdoor dining later than 10 p.m. I think we need to strike that because that's not been an approach, and I think we need to be consistent. Not fair to give someone something later than someone else.
So you want to just.
Because there's many residents, you know, you do have residents in the have concerns.
So we're just gonna take that out and here, and this, are we gonna have? Clause? If we just,
No, we're putting out there, so we.
Yeah.
It would be.
so we wanna take this out, but what do we want to say?
You don't need to, we can the whereas and make them bullet points. You don't need to have they're just a list of things,
Correct.
they're just lists of parameters.
It's just for
There doesn't have to be
parameters. The next item that we were addressing was the administrative approval process. And this started at September 2022 monthly meeting, committee board 3 passed the following resolution. Applicants granted administrative approval for beer wine license may not apply for a class change or extension of hours until have completed 1 year of operation. I think we discussed changing that to 2. Based on the fact that we are getting everyone that had applied for administrative approval is not coming back at 11 months for an upgrade. I mean, I think that was kind of doing 2, is everyone in agreement with that?
Kind of,
But the whole point of this, this. If they're gonna, we don't want anyone to use it as a stepping stone. This is an administrative approval for a business with a business plan closing at midnight. Because
Here in line.
it is imperative to address late night noise problems. They can close at 12, they're not gonna have any noise. We're not saying it's better, we're not saying it's worse, it's just
They
saying.
can still
They can
come
still
before
come,
the
yeah.
committee if they want to, at some point, at later hours, they don't have to go through the administrative approval, they can come to
Like
us.
they
and
can
be
come.
like,
Yeah.
We want to be a
I-
restaurant, but we don't want to be
Yeah.
Like,
perfect.
pulled into, but we don't want to be cornered into the spot where we can never get later hours. Or we're able to do this, so we're gonna come.
Yeah.
There's still
Yeah. They can-
Yeah, no,
This is only for the.
One of the fast track committee.
Yeah, they don't have
Yeah,
to use,
you don't use it. If you want to be open, maybe come
just
us.
come to us about that at the beginning.
Don't pretend.
Because we're getting, right now, we've been having, I think we're having 3, 4, 5 each month, is someone who's paying for an
They're using
administrative
it.
approval.
They're
And
using
then at 11 months, they're coming back for an upgrade, and that's not really what the program was to be. It was for, and we do say, I think that's the change. I think
And I
that,
said that like, if bigger people who have like larger backgrounds, so we're like, okay, I can fund this business for 11 months with my 12 o'clock closing, and now that in a year, I can get the extra hour.
Right. Yeah, I mean, legally, they can always come back to us. You can't tell people they can't apply for.
Yeah,
something.
of course.
But we're
Yeah.
saying that we're not gonna approve it because,
Yeah.
because, well, that's not what the program's about.
no, that number. So to the anonymous attendees, commenting a lot, we're going to discuss all your comments at the end. So I would wish you to please hold those comments because it's very distracting for us to try to do this while we're going through the things. But the January 2024 number was already discussed, that we will be updating that with the current number under the open resolution.
I mean,
Given
If
the
you
comments.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
It was January 2023 number and.
Yeah, so, again, to your comment about surprised if that number is still accurate. We're updating that number based on the current applications we've received. So again, we would really appreciate it if you would please put your comments until we go through this, and we will then open this up for public comment, and we will all discuss it.
Just close the chat. We're not supposed to, I mean, our regulations are not to use the chat anyway, except for protect
Separate.
properties.
Okay, so back to the administrative approval, we are then, based on what we were just discussing, the next whereas clause, I guess the first whereas clause, that we were saying. Community board three created a category of administrative approvals for food-based businesses applying for beer and wine businesses that close. Simply because, again, we don't want to just, it wasn't ever intended, and that's what a later whereas clause, it was never intended to be a second. So the next whereas clause is statement saying. Purpose is to encourage business to close early and address the issue of the process. The next whereas clause, we added those because that To ensure that this first second sentence was already there. To ensure that administrative rules are not used to gain support for a license only for the first step, for a higher impact license. CB3 is, and we can CB3 is implemented for the above reasons for a business that attempts to operate under. Or a business that intends to operate under.
It's kind of
Yeah, it's
something happened there.
CB3 is an implemented procedure. For the above reasons, the business that intend to operate
Under the
under a business plan of clothing and travel.
the application business plan or something, or the submitted business plan.
Under this is the business plan.
Yeah, under. And then applicants should not assume that an upgrade will be granted.
Let me just read that person, to ensure that administrative rules are not used to gain support for a license only as the first step for the higher impact license. I don't know if that's clear, so applicants may be doing for a license only as a first step for.
Maybe-
Future later hours or something.
Maybe
like
only-
that.
Usually what it is later on.
Maybe only need to ensure that administrative approvals are not used to gain support for a license. I meant actually, it should be to ensure that administrative approvals are not used to gain support for a beer and wine license. As a first step for a higher impact, we could put in parentheses, full liquor or whatever.
But I don't think that's true. I think some of the. I mean, are people doing that? They're using administrative approval to change to full liquor?
Yeah, how many upgrades in the past months? have we
I
had?
didn't realize.
Yeah, we're having a lot of people who were administratively approved. This past month, I think we had 2 or 3. We had the one on 7th Street. Or no, that was ours. But yeah, we are having a couple each month.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was mostly hours.
If
Well, how about some parentheses after higher impact, say, upgrade to OP or greater.
Yeah.
and I think that'll explain what we mean by higher impact.
Alright.
Because again, and we're not saying, I think this is only for the administrative process. We're not saying anything just for those things. Just not.
Be honest about your business.
Alright, so where's, I had this part as a suggestion. Whereas to ensure that administrative approvals are not used to sidestep public comment. Before the SLA committee, thereby gaining support for a license. Only as a first step.
I don't think it's public comment.
It's custom.
Yeah, I don't think that's what they're necessarily avoiding. I mean,
No,
I
they just
just,
don't want to come before the committee. It's not about the public.
Alright. Sidestep the SLA committee.
Well, that's kind of a loaded.
Yeah.
I don't,
To ensure that administrative to. Maybe it's to ensure that administrative approvals are not used to gain.
to,
Community boards support for a license.
or even further, just to ensure that administrative approvals are not a way to. Obtain a liquor or a license as a first, to obtain a beer and wine license as a first step to a higher impact license.
with the parentheses.
And then
I think food step is not because it's neutral words.
So, and I think we should say, is to ensure that administrative approvals are not used as a first step for a beer and wine license. Or are not used to get a beer and wine license as a first step to a higher impact license. Full or later out,
Yeah.
That's fine.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And move out with that one, I can make some changes. So whereas to ensure that administrative approvals are not used to gain a beer wine license as a first step for a higher impact license, and then put full P and then put slash later hours. Higher, so that they understand a little more clear. CB3 is implemented as procedure for the above reasons for businesses that intend to operate under the submitted business plan. Applicants should not assume that upgrades. That. And then the last one is
Under advanced submitted business plan,
Or-
or submitted, it's.
Under.
no.
Or submitted
should- under-
The submitted business plan.
Yeah, I think that's.
It's business plan, but it's not.
And then the last, therefore, be resolved that applicants for a community class on premises license or chicken house, beer license, wine license supported by approval by peers of operation for consideration and is not guaranteed that approval. So basically, all I have to do, the last one is summarizing that whereas above.
No, so what I was gonna ask is the totally new thing that's not here. Is this a time or could there be consideration for full liquor for business closing it within a 2-year period, 5 years or something?
Yeah, I mean. The only discussion we had around it last time
It's
was
brief, yeah.
brief and. I support that, yeah, what I was nervous about was. I like the mood music, to my, adds a little drama. Is basically, well, it just made me nervous because I was like, oh, I think that the slippery slope that we always talk about. But if we added something that was like a 5-year.
But the problem is, and this is, I don't disagree with you on that. The problem is, I don't think the SLA would support a 5-year restriction.
We don't have to. You can still.
Maybe it's before our 2-year, I don't know.
They haven't touched it, they've done 1 year. And that was for beer and wine. I don't know if we were to put 5 years and they were to come back after 2 years, no problems, and we deny them. They don't know if the SLA would support that. And at that point, it makes our process useless.
Well, we can ask.
Yeah.
How they feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, I am. You know, like you said, the slippery slope we always talk about, even if we make it 2 years, we give them a full license.
I will move it to you, so I make.
Yeah, but even, I'm just saying, even if we would make it less, and we make it 2 years. You know, we often have businesses that don't make it 2 years. So, no, but my point is, if they don't make it, and then they still have their liquor license, even if it's 12 o'clock closing. They could come in and, you know, be anything with a full liquor license at 12 o'clock closing. And go.
I don't think that's true at all. I think. SLA is much more attuned to those things
They
and
are.
impact, and I don't think that's true at all. I do think, based on complaints and stuff, I think a restaurant. First of all, what used to be restaurants like fine dining was beer was wine. That's no longer true. Restaurants now have cocktails if people want cocktails. And I think a restaurant that's clearly a restaurant that's going to actually close at 12, and we have a number of those.
Yeah.
You know, if there's cocktails, I don't think there's late night hours. I don't think there's really an impact.
I agree, I don't think it is, and I'm thinking about. You know, obviously, we're thinking about the future, but if. There was like a 3-year restriction, you'd have to really go into this. Being like, no, restaurant is our plan.
Yeah,
Right, there's gotta be like no. Superior motive on the applicants have, they have. Because they would have, I mean, there's one thing about waiting 11 months and. Figuring it out, but 3 years. You better figure out how to money.
Right.
Which honestly, like, you'll be more successful, more likely to make it as a license,
Yeah.
you know, with certain. Yeah.
But we could take a look for now and just ask the SLA, nice discussion.
and I mean, but I guess the other thing is, I still. You know, again, they can still come to us. Without making an administrative approval, they could still come to us and we would hear them.
It's a carrot. It is a carrot saying this will help with our problem.
And I know, we've always said that. If something is administratively approved and it's on the list, that if community members want, it can be pulled. Whatever happens, but are we cutting out the opportunity for community input? I just think the standard is, how does the 500-foot rule affect this? Where essentially eliminating the 500-foot, which I know the state.
But the rules already eliminated.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but they still have to go to a 500-foot hearing.
And they will have to go to a 5.
But if we're not, then we have no resolution from the community board, we're basically.
Which we do, they will have stipulations.
But it's just the standard stipulation, there's no comment from the public, there's nothing else that we often put in a resolution. I'm going for a 500-foot here.
I don't see problems with rounds that goes at 12, and there's more and more of those because we're having more
But
high-end.
it's, if Adam and Steve all become full liquor restaurants that all close at 12.
I think that would be wonderful. I do, because all of those lines and everything, they would all be gone, they would.
No,
When you wouldn't have anybody on the streets after the
the
12.
place next to Joy Face is allegedly a full restaurant, though it's not, there's a line there.
But they violate their stipulations all the time. You can't use someplace that is not compliant to this. They've been a problem for years and it's not.
They still are, and that's the thing, so that means I'm just hesitant to loosen our stipulations when we're already having a problem with people adhering to that.
I think it would, like I say, be a carrot, just like I think it would administer with your one administrator. And like Megan says, I think they'd be more likely to be successful with populace and stay. I think they'd be more likely, I didn't think of it before, but I think it's true, I think a
Less
lot,
turnover.
I think. Places come to us for upgrades because they're not making it, and I think, I'm not supporting, it's not that I want more high-end restaurants because. I'm not happy with the way the community has changed in that manner, I'm strictly looking at quality of life noise complaints.
I mean, I'm just concerned that we're driving out our small businesses, because then everything is gonna be a full license restaurant, and we're gonna have no other small businesses.
That's true, because no other small businesses are viable these days.
No, but because we're encouraging this, if we were to hold back a little bit and not approve everything that's coming before us. Maybe a landlord would lower the space and we could get something else, which has happened in several locations.
Okay.
I mean,
This will be my last statement because I don't want to argue about it.
I'm not,
So no, I'm just saying this will be my last statement. I think the places we have denied have been really problematic, and that's why the SLA support. We denied very, very few. One of the reasons the SLA really looks at our denials is because we deny so few, and I think we have very good reasons for those. I don't think that's a across the board thing, but I'm gonna stop. That's it.
I mean, I'm not totally disagreeing with you, I'm just. It makes me very nervous. Because I do feel like that will be encouraging restaurants with full liquor.
There's a lot more to turnover non-eating, drinking establishment store. Than just a liquor license, there's fitting out the entire, most of the times you need gas, most real restaurants prefer gas than electric. You need to have the Ansel, the hood system,
That's the-
complete ventilation.
That's the ventilation.
Yeah, out the back of the side of the building, cause it can't come out of certain, I don't think it's as easy to turn over regular stores into restaurants as you think.
But we do see it happening.
They have,
And I think the reason it's happening is because of everyone's buying everything online and everything is so expensive these days that other businesses just aren't viable.
Unfortunately, yeah,
Establishment of Doyers, that was my recent place that she was turning into a wine bar.
you're trying to rewind.
That was a storefront.
Yeah.
It's, there's a
And
lot
like
of
this
other
month, we
businesses.
had the hardware store on Bowery that's becoming a full license establishment.
I would think that's something that would still be viable.
So, you know, I'm not totally against the idea. I'm just nervous that are we opening ourselves up to something that we aren't anticipating? And I don't know if that's, none of us can predict the
You could
future.
also change the policy if we wanted to, I mean, if we implement a policy, can we change the policy?
Yeah, but I feel like we implement it now, the effects aren't gonna be felt, probably none of us will be on the committee when the effects are actually felt and then.
Right.
Well, I mean-
There's always a lag time for that.
Future committee can just choose to ignore, as we have done to some of these older guidelines and guidances,
Well, we haven't heard to most of them.
which we try.
Most
yeah.
of the things you ignore, it's because things have changed.
Yeah.
And the policies haven't been updated.
So, I think, again, we brought this up and we can then hear from any members of the public that might have comments on this too, but. Again, I'm not totally against it, I just think we really need to think it through.
Well, we're not voting tonight. right?
No, we're not voting,
And I
Just
can still
discuss
ask the SLA about.
yes, we should, I think we should still ask the SLA about that. We're not necessarily voting on really anything tonight, we're still just working through all this, and we're gonna eventually have a final document that will
Okay.
have everything, so we're still just going through, I guess, solidifying some of the things we discussed last month, and then,
Some of it's just updating because
yeah,
SLA laws or their interpretations have changed, so we have to change things to
so.
match what they're doing.
So right now, we basically updated, we haven't added any new or any kind of major changes, that would be a major change to update the administrative approval policy to add full liquor, so we can definitely discuss that, but.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I'm not sure either, to be honest, I see the benefits of it, and I'm just, again. Then if everything becomes, if we made it easier and then it does become all restaurants with full licenses, we really, if we're trying to encourage any other kind of retail diversity.
Those days are gone.
I don't think they are completely, we've had some new things popping up around the East Village.
Thrifting.
Well, thrifting,
But if you knew that, like, if you were a landlord and you had a space and you knew that a full restaurant would be approved with 12 o'clock, it opens up the applicants to your space a lot more, I think.
but then they can still continue charging a lot more. Cause they can pay more with full license than if it's gonna be some sort of retail shop. So then the rents, we would be, and in some ways, I think would be contributing to rent staying ridiculously high.
I'm just saying if they, not so much about getting a retail store in, but landlords may choose to put a restaurant there if they knew that the restaurant would get it versus a bar, because it may have less impact on their building. Which may then eventually be like, okay, less late night noise
Sure.
and.
Yeah,
If you remember, at one time, the bid was willing to get the property owners to put it in their leases that, if they could have. Certain restaurants as opposed to bars, and that the leases would reflect that, so.
Because the landlord for sure, knowing that they're gonna get high rent from either,
Yeah, it sounds
will
But it was.
like a lightning.
more likely
Which
choose a
sounds-
restaurant than a bar, because there's less liability issues, there's less impact on your tenants.
yes,
There's less.
there is
other
that.
things, yeah.
So I'll tell you where I'm coming from, because I don't believe, just personally, what I've seen, I don't think there is the ability that we used to have to influence what's coming in or what's coming out. I just think we've lost a lot of that. I may be wrong, that's just what I think. But I do think when it comes to complaints and it comes to late night, I think people in this area and parts of the Lower East Side are living in a wild west of very late night party. And I think this would go a long way to resolving that. And coming from a complaint standpoint of what people are living with.
Okay, and again, I agree with that as
So
well.
think about, just.
Stick a pin in it.
Yeah, stick a pin in it. Okay, so the last thing that we addressed from last month is under on our website, we have a section which is New York City regulations regarding dancing. We pared this down quite a bit
And changed it,
and yeah, just
changed it to fit city of yes
Yeah.
ranges.
so. Basically, Michael, can you pull up on the screen the section from last month, just so we can share the amount that, or the previous document, so we can.
So this is just informational, it's not a policy.
Yeah, this isn't our policy.
It's just informational because many businesses
Yeah,
do not
that.
understand the regulations regarding dancing.
Yeah, so this was previously on our website, New York City regulations regarding dancing. It had a lot more. It was a lot more involved because it was a little bit more involved. The new regulations which do allow dancing, we basically pared this down to say. It's no longer necessary to obtain a license to permit dancing. However, a business with dancing falls under use group 12 as opposed to an eating and drinking establishment, which is use group 6. Unless a specific location is grandfathered with a C of O that permits dancing, such as Webster Hall or Pyramid East Village, zoning in CB3 that permits dancing, it's generally C4 or C6. General commercial district. If the method of operation of the business on the original SLA license does not provide for dancing, the business must apply for a change in method of operation to allow dancing at the establishment. SLA requires that dancing must be a method of operation on the license, if not, the new business must apply. So even though the New York regulations have changed. If it is not on their liquor license under the method of operation or on their application when they apply to the SLA, they have to now apply to the SLA for a modification or change to their method of operation to allow for dancing.
So, like I said, this is strictly informational.
So again, it's not really nothing we would do. If they are applying to a change in method of operation to allow for dancing and they come to us, they would still have to apply to us. But if it's in an allowed zoning district, I think we could handle that administratively.
Okay, I
No,
just
we
think-
cannot, because it's not in our administrative regulations, and we've always, something like that has always come to committee.
I'm sorry, Mary, what
No,
was that?
good.
I was gonna say, I would spell out certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
instead of
Oh, yeah.
CMO.
I think it was just summer notes.
And then get rid of the space between C4 and C6.
Yeah. Okay,
And then right after that, at the end of commercial districts, there's a period and a comma.
yeah, and we'll definitely clean up all this,
Okay,
that
alright.
before we put it up, but it's just, but yeah, we'll point that, thank you for pointing that out.
Good to get that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, this isn't necessarily our policy, this is
The rules.
the rules that has changed, but because it is a common question and a common thing that I think Susan gets a lot of questions about.
And people, they just don't know.
People don't know or
They just
understand.
don't know.
They heard that it's been legalized, so they think it's legal. We just wanna make sure at least we have it available if they were to look it up. Okay. So. That's kind of the summary, and I guess we made a few little additions to things that we went over last month. We'll go ahead and now, I guess any other discussion on any of that before we open up to the public? Okay, so we will go ahead now and open it to the public.
All right, Michelle raising her hand.
Okay, we have Michelle Cooper Smith.
Thanks, guys. I just wanted to comment or weigh in on two things. One, well, I guess they're related. One is that just to say that I agree, Susan and I had a lot of these conversations in the past as well about the hours being the issue, not the type of license. So yeah, oh wait, sorry, the one that you were just on, the 2020, the September 2020.
This one?
No, not the dancing, the admin approval one.
This one, right?
Yeah, that one. So I just
Okay.
wanted to say, like, I don't know if you were, because this is including both hours and type of license. But if you're thinking about, I just would maybe want to bifurcate those, because if Susan and obviously Susan has the most experience with like what creates the impact here. If it's the type of license is less impact, but the hours are more impact, maybe it's 1 year for full OP. And again, it's just asking, right? No guarantee. And 2, years for later, just because
Actually, Michelle, you brought up a very good point. Now that you're saying this, if we're talking about administrative approval for beer and wine, if we're going to do
Yeah.
administrative approval for full liquor. I guess, well, no, you know what, the difference would be if we made it a less amount of time, like say we made it one, if we're gonna keep it at 1 or 2 years for beer wine, we're gonna make it a little longer for full liquor,
Yeah.
that might be the difference to keep them separate.
And also that you bring me to my second point, which is that for full liquor, something that's not in this beer wine admin approval is that we don't require the space to have been previously licensed. So that's another way that you can sort of do a little bit of control on an OP admin, is like, say the space needs to have had an active license within the past 2 years or whatever, something like that.
Okay, that is a good point too to add in, that would,
I don't think I can say it again.
Michelle was saying. The one point that if we were gonna do an admin approval for an OP. We could say that part of the admin approval process would be that it couldn't have been an unlicensed space, it would have to have been previously licensed.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and that actually makes it, that to me, that would make it actually a big difference, if it was previously licensed, we've said that in meetings, you know, we don't quite have as strict of a standard for that, so. That's a very good point, Michelle.
Yeah, so I think that, and so like if you're gonna do, if you're going to, and I think it would be a good idea to do an admin approval for full OP if you have these like some other strictures that don't exist within the wine beer admin, including, you know, this, that the license had been previously licensed within the, you know, continuously licensed within the past years, you know, just something that is like similar maybe to the temp license rules, so that they're in line there. Because
Yeah,
then,
that makes a lot of sense.
because I also like worry that if you put 2 years for the admin wine beer for full OP, you're gonna have unintended consequences where you're gonna end up with a lot of those people on your agenda instead, so that they can kind of circumvent the admin.
Yeah,
Because there's right, because you're not gonna get denied the hours. You're not gonna get denied the hours of 12 a.m. with a wine beer. Like there's no point really, unless it's someone horrible. Which I would not recommend, which is what happened with Trigger. But so like, you know, I just don't want there to be unintended consequences to create more work for you all, because obviously the point of the admin approval is to take some work off y'all's plate. So that would just be my suggestion, is like, if you're gonna change the wine beer admin, just maybe do later hours 2 years, full OP 1 year, and if you're gonna do the admin for full OP, have it have a couple of more strictures on it, such as like the previously licensed. That's my only input.
yeah, that's actually good, and that's a good point to really add to the full OP if we're to
That's
consider that.
it's a great idea, because that
Yeah.
resolves your problem of everything becoming a licensed place.
Yes, that does address that issue, and I think that helps me at least a little bit, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, next we have Kiana.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, please go ahead.
So my name is Kiana. I live on the Lower East Side, and I've dined, or at least attempted to dine outdoors every weekend since the program started this year. And I wanted to share my perspective on how it's been going. So to start, some good news. I've personally witnessed how seriously businesses are taking community feedback. I've seen Servos add no smoking signs to every outdoor table. Little Canal tells servers from the moment you sit down that you're not allowed to smoke. I've watched Ladiv staffers tell smokers to move away from open windows and to keep sidewalks clear. And I've even seen Servos staffers repeatedly step in to prevent loitering and loud music on the open streets, even when these individuals aren't patronizing their restaurant, which I would say is a responsibility that I believe has been unfairly foisted upon them, but that's a topic for another day. But the bad news is requiring all outdoor dining to be totally cleared by 10 p.m. is already having very negative practical implications. So in order to meet this deadline, servers are turning away folks who want to sit outside as early as 7:30 because they're not confident they can clear a table, seat, serve, and hand these diners a check quickly enough to be able to break down the tables before 10. I've seen staffers stressed about having the cops called at 10:01, something that's been happening and doesn't honestly show a lot of good faith on the part of some of our neighbors. I've personally been turned away at 7:30, and I've even watched servers turn away Charlie XCX, who's a hugely popular and famous musician, whose presence would have been incredible for a small business because she was trying to get an outdoor table around 8 p.m. on a Friday. The later start times are also a problem. People who have full-time jobs can't take advantage of the open street between 3 to 6. So we have to hope that between 6 to 7 on these 4 days each week, that it's not raining and it's not busy. And I know I've spoken at CB3 meetings before, but about this topic, but outdoor dining is the only way immunocompromised and high-risk folks can safely enjoy New York's restaurants. So this 10 p.m. curfew meaningfully affects our ability to participate. And keep in mind, we just learned yesterday that the FDA is poised to restrict vaccine access for a wide swath of Americans moving forward. So this is even more crucial. I know this year's hours are already set, but I wanted to flag the unintended consequences of the curfew well in advance of next year, because I think they make the case for more expansive hours for outdoor dining versus less. So I'd ask you to please consider adopting more flexible policies around outdoor dining, including that 12 a.m. end time on weekends. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kiana. Okay, I mean, the only thing I'd say, I mean, I have been personally, but I believe you, but I mean, if they're afraid to sit people at 7:30 and 8, that's being a little bit excessive. If they can't seat and clear a table in 2 hours,
There's
that's,
something wrong.
there
with it.
is, I understand their concern and their fear. And that they're
Yeah.
afraid the cops are gonna be called at 10 to 1, I get that, but
You also, I mean, as like you say to people, be like, you're more than welcome to see,
Yes.
but we're gonna have to get you out of here at 9:45.
see, that's been happening to me many times.
Or you could sit inside.
Yeah, I've sat out in
Obviously,
places.
not for her, sorry, that's
Yeah.
not an
I've
option,
also
but-
had many, because we're dealing with them, many of them say that they think 10 o'clock, many of the owners think 10 o'clock is perfectly responsible. And like even the people across the street told me that, that their biggest outdoor, some of them, biggest outdoor is for like weekend brunch. Is when they have their biggest ones. I'm gonna say the great majority of people we speak to, they have no problem with it, and it has been our standard for outdoor for many years.
Okay, but thank you, Kiana. Next we have Laura Sewell.
Hello, I'm sorry I couldn't join tonight in person, and I really appreciate the conversation. So I have a question about the admin approval for full OP, which I agree seems like a reasonable enough idea. And we typically, residents typically would not, feel like they had, it shouldn't be a change, but we do with the CB3 process as it is, we have the opportunity to meet with the applicant, which is a good indication of whether or not, they really are a restaurant, and even just if they're going to be someone who's going to work with the community or not. Like sometimes people resist that meeting or are, give indications of personality issues, frankly, during those meetings. In most of the time, it's very helpful, and the residents end up feeling kind of relaxed that they're having, a good operator coming in who's really going to run a restaurant. But I'm just wondering, like, what else would you be looking for with that? Would you be reviewing a menu? Would you still be asking applicants to meet with residents? I'm just asking to consider.
That's a good, those are good questions.
We don't ask, well, we don't require it now,
True.
but we could
Right.
but we could put whatever we want on the stipulations. Maybe that's something that you would consider if there is a community group that the applicant must meet with the community group.
Yeah, I think that would be, that would go a long way to not having residents object to this, because they do feel like they're losing some power in what little power they have in the process. So that, and seeing a menu and meeting with a community group would be great. And then my other thing about the full OP, right now, again, we're seeing people come back after a year for an upgrade to full OP. And I get that that's different from wanting later hours. I totally get that. But it is often something that if the applicant may not have intended, it sort of erases your intention of wanting applicants to apply for the business they want to run. So if they're coming in wanting a restaurant with a beer wine, and maybe the only reason they're seeking the upgrade is that business isn't what it was supposed to be. You then have a full OP license, which is more valuable to a landlord. And then it's grandfathered, and now you can come for administrative approval for the next applicant when you know, sell the assets or whatever. So I still feel like, I think a lot of cases, 1 year, especially depending on when that year starts and ends, is not always enough for us to really know what's going on. And
that's what we said too.
I see the puzzle, and maybe you ease the burden with the admin approval and you know, given some community opportunity for community input for the previously licensed location. But when you're going from a beer and wine to full liquor, there's just, even though there may not be a difference in impact and noise complaints, there is a difference in impact on the neighborhood. And we do see growths of businesses opening that are not full liquor. We've gotten more bakeries, we've gotten, you know, bookstores, craft stores, it's happening. It's a miracle to me, but it does happen, and that people do open something else and are successful because that opportunity is there for them. And especially if there are other businesses around them that are similar and they support each other, and people go to those streets on purpose, looking for something special. So that's it. That's my
Yeah, thank you, Laura. You know, what Laura brought up is something that we did mention, and what we mentioned in meetings several times is, if some, you know, just say we're keeping the admin approval, right now we're just gonna talk about beer and wine, at 1 year. And say they open in June or July. The first month, it always takes them a little bit to ramp up, so they don't really fully get going until August or end of August. They can then apply for their year to basically in May of the following year, so they'd be open in June for a full year. We hadn't really seen them operate for a legit summer. That was one reason why we were talking about extending it, even I think we had talked around 18 months. That way, at least you truly get to see a full year cycle of their operation.
Well, I think it's two things. One, yes, that's true, but also we put in the administrative approval to have a certain kind of business, not to have people.
Well, yes, the point,
So there's 2 points,
That's
there's 2 points,
two different
yeah,
points.
I mean, I'm gonna say 2 different reasons for the same.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, yeah, Kiana.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Kiana.
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to respond to what I said before. So my
Yeah,
about the 7:30 time, I believe the problem is that they are worried they won't be able to seat diners for another hour after that, right? So if you're arriving at 7:30, you won't be able to be seated until about 8 or 8:30, and then it'll be a problem. But I just want to say, you're asking for community input. I'm giving you my perspective as
No, and we're not disputing that, we're not agreeing
You're
with you.
asking for my perspective as a community member. I have an immunocompromised partner, a person with a disability, and you are dismissing my comment outright. This meeting was hard enough.
Wait,
This
Kiana.
meeting was hard enough to find as
That's
is,
not right.
and does not imply that you're actually interested in community input.
Kiana, I'm going to respectfully disagree, we did not dismiss your comment outright. I said, I have an issue if they're coming in at 7:30 and not seeing people, they need to adjust the business plan. I wasn't saying, and I said, I'm sure it's happening. So I was not dismissing you, so please do not put words in my mouth. I find that disrespectful.
I mean, I find the fact that this meeting was so difficult to find in the first place to be able to give input disrespectful. This is disingenuous. This is 4 people in a basement making a decision about people who are disabled. And we have had members of our neighborhood come in disingenuous.
Kiana, please. Kiana, you've kind of taken this a little bit off topic, and I think
I don't believe that this is off topic. The concern here is this 10 p.m. end time. I'm telling you that in practice, this is not This is not actually very workable. This is also an issue given the fact that
And we've taken that
roadside
feedback.
dining is not available year round.
This
Sidewalk
meeting is
seating
not
is.
really to address the open dining program
This-
for New
yeah,
York.
I'm not
Government.
talking about open dining solely. I'm talking about outdoor dining writ large. I'm talking about the 10 p.m.
Not
curfew.
addressing outdoor dining.
I'm
That
not
wasn't
talking, I'm
topic
talking about
for you.
outdoor dining. I am talking about the 10 p.m. curfew. I apologize if I'm a little bit off topic here. It's very difficult to hear what you guys are saying. 10 p.m. is the issue. The open streets are the best example of this in our neighborhood.
Stipulations.
It was in one of the earlier ones.
That was just on a different avenue.
So, you
10
know,
p.m. is the issue here.
Maybe-
That's what I'm talking about. And most of
and
our
and we've
outdoor
heard
dining.
that.
Most
heard-
of our outdoor dining options are not available year round. So as of right now, we only have roadside dining for a portion of the year. We only have open streets for a portion of the year. Sidewalk seating is the only year-round available option. As far as I'm aware, in 10002, if you look up on the committee for war, I can't remember what the name of the specific city council committee is called. If you look it up, there are only 4 sidewalk seating cafes available in 10002. That does not imply that there is a lot of available options, and most of these businesses are not operating these sidewalk seating options year round.
A lot of them have conditional approval. So you're, as far as the approval, you're correct that DOT has been
Sure.
taking way too long, but because of that, they've now given conditional approval to almost everyone, so all of those outdoor cafes are actually operating legally, because they have conditional approval, and with that conditional approval, they can also apply to the SLA to extend their license.
Right. I just want to
So-
say, you have talked quite a bit about quality of life. Again, I am very concerned that being high risk or immunocompromised has been entirely overlooked in this conversation. The responses I'm getting here suggest that you're not particularly interested in that part of the conversation around quality of life. I will leave it at that for now, but again, this is not, in practice, this does not make for a space for people who are actually disabled and who need these outdoor options. It does not make this actually workable in practice. That is the point that I'm trying to make here.
And
Yes.
I mean, I hear you completely, but I think we're also just trying to weigh, you know, a lot of community complaints about late night noise. And a lot of people also wanting outdoor dining, so our job here is to do what we think is right for everybody. It's a tough job, you know.
I understand that. I mean, you've already accused me of getting off topic here with open streets, so I will just say one thing as a side comment here. The part of the thing that would solve this problem is additional seating on the open street. Part of the issue here is that the seating is only available if you are frequenting these businesses. These businesses have limited seating options. They have limited hours of operation. There's a lot of demand in this neighborhood, right? I think we can all agree that this is a popular nightlife area. Additional seating would solve some of these problems. And public seating would also solve some of these problems. I know that
Correct.
Neighbors on Canal has made a lot of comments about how, and more nights of operation as well. I know that Neighbors on Canal has made a lot of comments about how it's not fair that this is a privately owned enterprise. I actually agree with that. There should be more publicly available outdoor options as well.
So now that you mention it, pre-pandemic, there was a program called street seating, which
Yes.
was not attached to restaurants. And that has disappeared. I actually hadn't thought about that till
There
now,
was, yeah.
but you're right, that whole program has disappeared.
And
Right,
all-
which is why I'm here to speak today. Again, if nothing else, I ask you guys moving forward, whether it is about restaurants, other businesses, just outdoor options in general, there is a need for this from a public health standpoint. Again, let me repeat, the FDA yesterday said that they want to restrict COVID vaccine access. This is going to become more and more crucial as we move forward in a city that is now going to be dominated by a Trump administration. I mean, we can have a whole different conversation about how the mayoral race is going to play out here, but again, I think we need to think about the bigger picture here.
So I will inquire to DOT if there's any any thought about reinstating the street seating program?
That would be great. That would be really nice. And thank you, Keon, for your comments, for hanging on. And
I appreciate you letting me speak again. I very much appreciate it. Again, I know that you guys have a tough job. I know that there are a lot of people who are quite, again, the 10:01 end time and the police are getting called. I know that there are a lot of people who have issues with the program as is, but again, this is very, it's not a frivolous thing. This is necessary from a public health standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura raised her hand again. Laura.
Sure, go ahead. I mean, we're gonna finish it up after this, but go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just wanted to mention something that I'm aware of with the previous conversation. DOT has put something forward, and I believe there may be an intro at the city council where it allows for like some sort of franchising for publicly available seating on the restaurant seats. So it may be, if Susan, you could check in with the public realm folks and ask what that exactly is. And I'm sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but they are aware of this and are looking for ways to do it on restaurant streets.
Laura, I missed some of that. Would you do me a favor, either send me a link or send me an email?
Yeah, yes, I
Because
will.
It might be something we might want to put on our agenda, so I'd like to find out quickly.
Yep. I will do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Laura.
you, everyone. Anyone else in the public want to speak before I think we're gonna wrap up? I think we've addressed everything.
We
We'll
have
pull.
to do the district needs.
Oh, we were
It's on
doing.
the agenda, isn't it?
Oh, was it on? It should be, you know, I didn't look.
I thought it was, should have been.
It might be, I didn't. I mean, I take your word that it is, Susan, if it
No,
was.
don't, you know,
Let me just see,
don't take my word for anything these days. I'm
let's
so
see, let me
crazy.
make sure. Yes, you're right. First review for updates for our district needs statement is on the agenda, so.
Nobody did the agenda.
I mean, this was just this meeting for the guideline, so I didn't even look.
You told me not to put it on a regular committee, to put it on this committee.
I probably did. I'm sure we had that discussion and I completely forgot we had the discussion. But this is just, anyways, this is just the first review of the,
So the only point of this, it's not to review for policy or anything.
oh wait, you just handed the same, these are the
Yeah,
guidelines, this is the district meeting.
Oh, I emailed the wrong
Wait,
thing.
no, they're back, they're over there.
Here, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I did not, I told him not to take. It's okay. So the only point of this is to go through and see which sections need to be updated.
Okay,
If there's anything that we need to review and eliminate, if there's anything we need to add. It's not to make changes, it's just to look at the sections and say what needs to be changed. And the beginning starts with COVID, so we're gonna have to change all that.
yeah, so that beginning, all those, that whole first section, I
So
think.
then I'm gonna say change recode.
Yep.
The statistics,
Obviously, the statistics need to be updated for 25.
yeah, but the office always
The
does
office does
that,
that.
but we cannot do that till July.
Yeah.
Let's go to the second page.
Highlighted,
Yeah, let me
footnotes.
take a second. This section about the city has moved away from enforcement.
That's
is
still true.
Where's that?
What?
What?
On the
This-
top
the top
of
of
the
the
second,
second
the back of the back.
Yep, yep, we're here. That is still true.
Oh, you're.
And then the SLA has jurisdiction over. Fine. I think that,
think
that's true.
That's still true, that still applies.
Then under open restaurant, we're gonna have to totally change open restaurant
Yeah.
because the program didn't exist before. And that's it.
Yeah, so it'll be the open New York, dining out New York at the time of writing. So yeah, we'll address that, the dining out
That'll
New
have to
York
be
is now
all changed.
permanent.
And that's it.
And then we'll address those numbers where they currently have however many open.
You wanna send this around in a Word doc so we can. Have it in minutes, most. When we did
To
this.
do what?
couple of years ago. Just so see it on the computer.
Oh, yeah, it's, no, it's
Oh, we
on,
have it on.
so let me tell you, but you guys didn't listen to me at the full board. Go to the website and where it has the district needs, just copy and paste into a Word document.
Okay,
We purposely did that so everybody has editing abilities.
okay.
Alright.
So that's it, roll call.
Okay, so we are going to move to adjourn. Megan Joy,
Yes.
Clint Spencer, yes, Michael Lavardo,
Yes.
okay. Thank you, everyone.
Clint, if you could stay